every trial that is not AI driven will be replaced by a clinical trial which is AI driven.
Good morning, I'm Bill Trefiro, in for John Phillips and Kim Blair, and this is Virginia Technology Today. Every medication that you take, that you want to take, or that you will take goes through various phases of clinical trials. Clinical trials are the necessary testing and filter to make sure cutting-edge medicine is both effective and safe. But a lack of diversity in clinical trials and inefficiencies in conducting them can lead to failures, which can sometimes mean life-saving medication or medical devices take decades to make it to market. Dr. Harsha Rajasimha is CEO and founder of Jiva Clinical Trials, Inc. After going through the Regional Accelerator and Mentorship Program, they have built a digital platform designed to tackle both problems. But let's start with the issue of diversity.
Most of the clinical trials have historically been run in United States and European Union, with the rest of the world not being as engaged in this process. That is one big cause of why there is lack of diversity. Because yes, United States is a melting pot of the global population, but most of the major populations in the world are minorities in US, but they are not minority in the world. Like the Asia and Africa have more than half of the world living there, and so on, right? And they are not proportionally represented in clinical research historically. And that's the big problem. And everybody recognizes that. FDA has put out guidelines on increasing DEIA in clinical trials. Now, the problem is industry platforms, tools, processes were all built with English-speaking Western population in mind, because that's where last 80 years of market was, and it still is today, right? And as we recognize the need to go global, we need to bring up our brothers and sisters in other countries also up to speed and bring up their ecosystem. And what that means is we need to adopt large language models, AI, along with upskilling human experts in not only English-speaking Western cultures, but also in all the other languages and also other cultures on how they have trust or mistrust with the clinical trial enterprise, and how we can engage and retain and earn their trust, which cannot be done overnight, and it's going to take time. How Jiva is addressing this challenge is by exactly doing that, is start building trust by communicating with them in a language, in a tone, and in a cultural sensitive way that they prefer, by implementing large language models, AI, open, Chat GPT and open AI based tools that will engage them in their language. And two, implementing trust enhancing features, having a patient portal where the patients and participants can look at their own data at any given time and have a way to contact the investigators, teams at any given time in whichever language. And it's not always necessary that the other side understands all those languages because of the tool that sits in between. The translation of audio, video, text, and multimedia can happen in any language based on the user's preference and comfort level rather than their ability to learn new languages, because that's all automated these days.
In other words, the Jiva platform is using artificial intelligence to chat with non-English speakers in their native language to answer questions about the clinical trial. But communication is only a sliver of the diversity problem in clinical trials. Geography and proximity to a clinical trial has historically been a huge problem for the underrepresented. But Dr. Rajasimha says technology is there to help too.
You bring up an excellent point on the definition of diversity that includes under hard to reach geographies, mountainous regions, the Blue Ridge Mountains and the New River Valley and so on, right? So when we talk about diversity, it's not just the race, ethnicity, and the global population, but also even within the United States, ensuring rural populations and low and middle income populations, socioeconomic diversity is also equally important. And so these remote technologies, the ability to engage patients where they are with their own device on the internet, ability to minimize travel burden. So it's not limited only to people who live within 20-mile or 50-mile radius of these investigator sites, but also anybody should be able to participate with little or no travel. And that's the change that COVID-19 pandemic brought about for good. And now that is here to stay. It's becoming more and more routine in clinical research to have remote patient screening and recruitment process, remote patient televisits and video visits where in-person visits are not necessary or can be avoided, and monitoring patients remotely through wearable devices and sensors. So it's really integrating all these types of technologies, or even purpose building them is how Jiva is leading the transformation in clinical research.
We're speaking with Dr. Harsha Rajasimha, the CEO and founder of Jiva Clinical Trials, Inc. According to clinicaltrials.gov, there are more than 170,000 clinical studies underway in the United States right now, and only a small percentage of them are using AI, or fully remote for that matter. But all that is going to change, and quickly.
Every trial that is not AI-driven will be replaced by a clinical trial which is AI-driven. And we see ourselves being at the forefront of driving that revolution of adoption of AI and machine learning and automation in clinical trial management. I think there is opportunity to automate up to 80% of a clinical trial. It takes people, process, and technology. What we have done until now is technology as an independent piece. What is going to happen next wave is automating some of the people and processes. Whoever is doing manual, repetitive tasks and failing one out of 10 times, it's 90% is not acceptable in clinical trials. It's a regulated space. You got to be 100%. And so robots can be trained and be much better at making those processes foolproof. They don't never forget. They don't need to be reminded again and again if you set a reminder. And so automating that process is where I see AI is going to be huge, and large language models and the translation, which I explained earlier.
So digital platforms like Jiva will soon make clinical trials more accessible if you want to participate. They'll make them more accurate and diverse, will shave months, if not years, off the time to market. And Dr. Rajasimha says Jiva is already doing all of those things.
And we had a few in India, and one of them that we are really honored and proud of is the first CAR T cell gene therapy that was developed in India for pretty much curing leukemia and lymphoma, B-cell lymphoma, which is a severe cancer in children and adults, which essentially was costing about $500,000 in the US. A small biotech company coming out of the Indian Institute of Technology developed this new technology to make these so affordable for 1/10 of that cost in India. And Jiva was really honored to be part of that, enabling the data capture part of it, which is a small but critical piece of the clinical trial process. And so we are very excited that they have received approval from the Indian regulators, and it's being commercially made available widely across India and other low and middle income countries. That's one example. We have helped a number of rare genetic disease patient advocacy groups. In rare diseases in particular, patients are distributed far and wide globally, and there may be only 30 patients in US for certain ultra rare diseases, but there may be 3,000 patients in the rest of the world. And if there is a way to engage them and create a patient registry, that registry can serve as a mechanism to recruit patients for a clinical trial, whether it is sickle cell disease, thalassemia, which are quite prevalent and common in Africa and India, where there are millions of patients, but are very rare still in the US, relatively speaking. And so in those areas, we have several nonprofit groups such as Combined Brain or Cure Rare Disease, working on muscular dystrophies and neurological conditions, helping them build registries and patient engagement through remote engagement tools.
We want to thank Dr. Harsha Rajasimha, CEO and founder of Jiva Clinical Trials, for being part of the segment. We also want to thank executive producer Joey Self and Thought Out Media for editing the program. Until next week, I'm Bill Trefiro, and this is Virginia Technology Today.